You Are My Sunshine by architect_of_stars. Summary. Everyone's okay. Shota reassures them. Even Midoriya? Hagakure asks. Shota stills, and then it's all static, because he counts all the heads and 2 more students stand unaccounted for. Midoriya and Bakugo. Panic engulfs Shota in waves. If anyone was going to be at the front of the battle, it would be both of them, and if the villains hadn't reached the cave at all, then the fight had ended with Bakugo and Midoriya. Or, this is that fic which delves into the aftermath of the movie Heroes Rising from Aizawa Shota's point of view. Shota jolts awake and glares at his phone that continues to blare loudly. He is suddenly aware of the empty space next to him and notices a note in the place of Hisashi's warm body. For a moment, he thinks Hisashi's been kidnapped and sits up alert, half reaching out for his capture weapon, but relaxes as soon as he spots the other man's loopy handwriting. He picks up his phone and a frown sets on his face as he tries to figure out why the hell Nezu is waking him up in the middle of the night. It was a well-established fact that no one was ever to disturb Shota when he was sleeping. A barely awake, pissed-off Shota's wrath was something the teachers and students alike had learned to avoid unless it was an absolute emergency. Aizawa-kun, Nezu says immediately as soon as Shota picks up the call. I need you to head to my office. The other teachers have already gathered there. It would be best if you could make yourself presentable to head out. Nezu's tone is flat, which worries Shota to no extent. As an underground hero, he relies on the information he finds out. He likes to be as thorough and prepared as possible in order to have the element of surprise. The fact that Nezu offers him no information whatsoever sends alarm bells ringing in his head. Shota gets off the bed, reaching for his usual black clothes. Nezu, he starts, only to get cut off. It's a possible code black. And with that, the line goes dead. It stops Shota in his tracks, arms falling limply to the side. A code black was assigned to the worst possible situation UA could face. The loss of a student's life due to a villain attack. The panic that courses through him is enough to get him moving haphazardly. He dresses in a rush, throwing on his goggles and capture weapon as he heads to Nezu's office. All the kids were in the dorms, every student accounted for except for Class 1A. Aizawa almost stops walking when he realizes that only his kids are missing, away from school. Out of Aizawa's reach. His kids. He sees bits of memories flashing before him. Asui's terrified eyes from the USJ. Ida's arms wrapped in bandages from Hosu. Jiro and Hagakure's unconscious forms from the training camp, and Midoriya's broken bones in every given situation. That's all it takes for Shota to burst into a sprint. He tries to rationalize what Nezu had told him. It's only a possible code black. Possible. They're only 15, barely 16, and yet they carry the world on their shoulders, face too many villains, seen too much blood and death, and Shota isn't there to protect them again. He hopes, selfishly, that it wasn't his students for once. That it was something on campus that they could deal with immediately. Please, not his kids. Please, not again. He stops in front of Nezu's office, nearly out of breath. When he steps into the room, the soft murmuring stops and the room falls silent. The teachers stare at him with concern, sympathy, and some try to hide their emotions, masking their expressions into a poker face. But Shota had seen enough of their expressions, and he feels his stomach drop. So it was his class after all. He leans against the wall and closes his eyes, trying to even his breathing and collect his emotions. He feels a person come and stand beside him. He already knows who it is. Hisashi, he greets quietly, eyes still closed. A warm object is pressed into his hands. He opens his eyes to see a cup of steaming coffee. Thank you, Shota murmurs. You didn't read my note, Hisashi responds, voice just as quiet. Shota blinks at him, eyes widening. I forgot. A strange smile appears on the other man's face. Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't think... It isn't important anyways. Hisashi pauses awkwardly, and then... Shota, they'll be okay. This is 1A we're talking about. They're super tough. I know. Shota responds, because he does believe in his class, more than any class he's taught so far. But the uneasiness that has crept up on him doesn't reassure him. How many villains? Shota asks, leaning away from the wall as he turns and faces his husband, and then Shota takes in Hisashi's face and his hero costume. You were the last one Nezu called up, knowing how you'd react, so the rest of us had a bit of a head start. Hisashi answers instead, and then he looks away, lips pressed tightly. Shota's gut recoils. He knows that expression. Hisashi, he hisses, gripping his husband by his shoulders. Shota, don't, Nemuri calls as she walks towards the both of them. He ignores her. On a scale of my students accidentally dropped Mineta out of a window to the Camino Ward incident, how bad is it? Hisashi refuses to even look at Shota, and then, quietly, like that of a whisper carried by the wind, he says, Not as bad as Camino? Shota grits his teeth. Hisashi, I swear to God. Look, we're not exactly sure. Hawks and Nezu will brief you better. Hisashi raises his hands up in surrender. Hawks? Shota asks, voice low, eyes imperceptibly wide. Did I say hawks? That's not what I meant. Hisashi laughs sheepishly, panic flashing in his eyes, but Shota is already stepping away from him, a chill running down his spine. Hawks was dealing with the cases of stolen quirks. Shota's blood runs cold, and he looks at Hisashi, struggling to keep it together. The villains that Hawks has been hunting down are the ones that are attacking my class. I'm afraid so, Eraser. He hears a voice behind him, and he turns to face Hawks wearing a grim expression. We don't have much time, Nezu says from Hawks' shoulder. Just as Hawks made this discovery, we received a drone from Class 1A requesting for backup. It takes everything for Shota to keep a neutral expression. His students, who never called for help or backup because they believed they could deal with anything by themselves, especially after they had earned their provisional licenses, had done the one thing Shota had taught them to do when encountering villains. Under normal circumstances, Shota would be more than relieved that they had listened to him for once, but the uneasiness in his stomach grew into a pit, filling his lungs. Just how much trouble were these kids in? Would he be burying one of them today? Shota's worry only grows tenfold when the Hero Commission sends in troops and troops of soldiers, along with the pro-heroes to aid in the rescue. As a pro-hero, that word was something Shota never thought he'd associate with his own students. For the millionth time that day, he wondered how bad the situation was that it required so many reinforcements. His fingers impatiently drum against the handrest of his seat, and he can feel Hisashi's worried gaze on him. I'm fine, he breathes out, just as Hisashi opens his mouth to speak, and then watches as his husband abruptly closes his mouth. Shota counts 5 seconds before Hisashi turns to him again. Sho, stop it. I'm not doing anything. Shota rolls his eyes. Sunshine. Hisashi murmurs softly. You're so restless that you've been tapping both your fingers and feet. Not that anyone minds, but you need to calm down a little. Shota stares at his legs and realizes that Hisashi's right. He stops tapping his leg, but the drumming stays. I just need a minute, he tells Hisashi. Sho, they're your kids. Of course you're worried. But they'll be okay, and we have to be strong right now because... I know. Shota cuts him off. because Obero's smile haunts his dreams, and he cannot afford to lose someone again, especially one of his kids. He closes his eyes, leaning against the window of the plane, his mind drifting to the conversation he had with Nezu. "Aizawa, I know you're feeling a lot right now," Nezu says gently as he pulls Shota aside. "What I'm about to say will not make you feel any better, but it's better to expect the worst than go in unprepared." "Just spit it out already," Shota bites. Nezu lets out a long sigh, and then, "This is now considered a rescue mission." He pauses to let the words sink in. Shota doesn't even so much as blink. It doesn't surprise him, but the dread in his gut intensifies and he thinks he might be sick. He somehow manages to grunt in acknowledgement. The worst-case scenario, we assume that all 20 are severely injured, and the villains still remain on the island. There's a pause, but Shota simply raises an eyebrow that says, "Why are you lying to me?" as he recalls the possible code black Nezu had previously informed him of. Nezu continues, ignoring Shota's questioning look. "Our plan of action is based on that scenario. Our priority is to get the students to safety and off the island, and then evacuate the citizens as well." Nezu scans Shota's face once, and then continues. "We'll leave the battle against the villains to heroes like Endeavor, Best Genus, Hawks, etc. You can first help your students, and then if time permits, join the fight." Shota nods, but doesn't comment otherwise, because it was clear to the both of them that Shota would not be leaving his students' sides after recent events that had occurred in his absence. "There's something else you should know." Nezu treads cautiously, and Shota immediately stiffens. That's the exact tone Nezu takes when he's about to deliver bad news to Shota, and he doesn't know how Shota will react. Yaoyorozu Momo was the one who made and sent the drone. She mentioned that they do have a plan to keep the villains away from the civilians, so that they aren't walking in completely blind. "But?" Shota prompts, gritting his teeth. "The one who came up with the plan..." Nezu trails off, letting Shota piece it together. As Shota's dark eyes meet the rat's own sympathetic ones, realization strikes him as clear as lightning, and he thinks of murdering the entire Hero Commission. "Midoriya," Shota responds, eerily calm, definitely calmer than he feels, and he watches Nezu's eyes widen imperceptibly. "Aizawa, she didn't directly state anything in the message. It was just an implication I picked up on. I thought it was best to..." "If anything has happened to any of my students..." Shota cuts Nezu off, his voice deadly. "The world wouldn't be enough to take on my wrath." Shota walks away from Nezu and the other teachers, leaving them in silence. He's pulled out of his thoughts as a gentle hand taps his shoulder, and Hisashi quietly says, "We're here, Eraser." The moment they land, the heroes seamlessly begin to work together, moving quickly to aid the students and citizens. Shota controls his impulse to run ahead and find his kids. They come across Yaoyorozu and Aoyama first, soldiers supporting both of them, and Shota feels relief rush through him as he finds them responsive and functioning, apart from a few minor injuries. "Sensei." Yaoyorozu looks like she's about to cry with equal relief, and Shota permits himself to place a hand on her shoulder gently and tell her that the heroes will take it from here. "You did well," he says gruffly, and then turns away before she starts crying. He'll talk to all of them individually, once he ensures that everyone is safe. Hawks calls in, saying he's found Tokoyami and Ashido. Ashido is injured, but it isn't too severe, and Tokoyami hasn't sustained any injuries. Shota mentally tallies up the numbers in his mind. He passes by Ida, Asui, and Kirishima, battered and exhausted. But Kirishima grins, shooting him a thumbs up. Ida smiles, and Asui nods, and Shota nods back to them, more relief flooding his chest. 7 kids so far, 13 more. The other hero group reports in and says that the villains have already been defeated. There were supposed to be 4 of them, but only 3 have been found and secured so far. They're still searching for the leader of the group. For a moment, Shota stands stunned. The other heroes with him wear expressions of awe, and Dragoon turns to him. "What the hell do you teach these kids, Eraser?" Pride encases his heart, and he decides to indulge those kids when they get back to UA. They deserve that much. "You've got a good class," Vlad admits begrudgingly, and it brightens Shota's mood considerably. Just then, he spots Sero and Kaminari pass by the group supported by soldiers. "Sensei, you're here!" Kaminari calls out, smiling with victory, and Shota smiles back. "Good job," he acknowledges. He watches as they both beam, and then Sero says, "Uraraka and Mineta should be right behind us. They need help." 9 down, 11 more. Shota nods, and then they split ways. In a few minutes, just like Sero had mentioned, they come across Uraraka and Mineta, who lay on the ground, exhausted. 2 heroes move forward to pick them up, and after Shota makes sure they're fine, he moves on. 11 down, 9 more. Shota doesn't get very far before he crosses paths with a soldier who maneuvers Shoji in a medical chair usually used for paralyzed patients. Before Shota can say anything, the soldier speaks. "He isn't in any immediate danger. No paralysis. Maybe a few broken bones and sprains, but the kid can't stand, let alone walk." Shoji smiles feebly. "Sensei, I'll be okay. It's nothing Recovery Girl can't handle. You should check on the others." Shota nods, gaze lingering on his student, who's bruised and worn. He feels embarrassed that his student is reassuring him, while it should be the other way around. But he shakes himself out of it and forges on. Ojiro and Jiro follow behind Shoji, with soldiers supporting them by the waist and shoulder. Ojiro stretches out a clenched fist to express that he's alright, while Jiro grins brightly at Shota. For the most part, they're all exhausted and in dire need of food and rest. But they're okay. They're okay. Shota repeats it like a mantra to ground himself. 6 more kids. Endeavor calls in saying he's found Todoroki, and Shota leaves it at that, ignoring the loud "Shoto" that follows. He can imagine the boy's unimpressed look and Shota's lips twitch. 5 more. He reaches the top of the hill, where there's a cave containing all of the citizens. He helps Vlad and Dragoon move the large rock covering the entrance, praying that everyone inside is safe. The boulder moves to the side, and a minute later, Shota is met with loud cheers from the citizens, and he rushes in and sees the relieved expressions of Koda and Sato. Hagakure throws herself against Shota, hugging him tightly, and he hugs her back. He lets Koda wrap his arms around him as well. Lastly, Sato buries his face into Shota's arm from the side as he whispers, "Thank you, Sensei." And Shota realizes how scared these 3 must have been, locked in the dark as the last line of defense to protect all of the island's inhabitants, while they had no idea what was happening on the outside. The realization that Sato thanks him for coming to get them out hits him like a train, and he moves a hand and places it on Sato's head. "It's going to be all right," he murmurs softly. "Sensei," Hagakure whispers, and Shota hums in response. Is everyone okay? Are they all right?" "We heard a lot of noises, and there was so much shaking, and we didn't know what was going on," Sato adds. Koda simply nods, but Shota sees the mixture of fear and worry in his eyes. "Everyone's okay," Shota reassures them. "Even Midoriya?" Hagakure asks. Shota stills, and then it's all static, because he counts all the heads, and 2 more students stand unaccounted for. Midoriya and Bakugo. Panic engulfs Shota in waves. If anyone was going to be at the front of the battle, it would be both of them. And if the villains hadn't reached the cave at all, then the fight had ended with Bakugo and Midoriya. He pulls back hurriedly and crouches to face the three of them. "Where were Bakugo and Midoriya positioned?" he asks urgently. "It's on the other side, as far away from the cave as possible," Hagakure says, slightly distressed now. "I'll come back, I promise, but I've got to check." "Sensei, we're fine." Sato smiles. "Go," Kota signs. "Save them," Hagakure pleads, and then Shota is running. He's probably only been running for a few minutes, but to Shota he feels like it's been hours. He's terrified. The last time he felt this way was when Oburo ran into... He shakes his head, gritting his teeth as he glides over rocks and grass. He has to focus on the present. He prays that they're okay. "I'll even forgive Midoriya for all of his broken bones. Just let him be alive, Kami." He reaches the clearing and sees a huge crater in its place. The dread and anxiety is back in full force now as Shota runs. He hears a voice in the back of his head. And it strangely sounds like Nezu. "Midoriya-kun made the plan, Shota. It means that he and Bakugo are the last line of defense, and the battle would never reach the cave." The voice lowers into a whisper. "It means Midoriya would die to save the people on the island, to save Bakugo, to save all of his classmates." Shota slides down the side of the crater, capture weapon clutched in his hand as he furiously works to shut out the voice. And then he sees three figures a few meters in front of him. At first he sees Bakugo, laid out, and the only indication he's alive is the slow rise and fall of his chest, barely moving. But Shota sees it, and he sees Yagi's coat folded and laid out as a pillow behind his head. He allows himself to momentarily bask in relief, but it vanishes immediately when he turns to face the other two figures, and his heart rockets. Yagi's on the ground, cradling Midoriya's body between his arms, tears staining his cheeks. Shota feels bile rising up his throat, and he thinks he's definitely going to be sick as his stomach violently lurches. He drags himself forwards, towards Yagi, any emotion he has left draining away from him, and he falls to his knees in front of the both of them. Midoriya looks like hell, blood covering his face, trickling from his head, arms broken beyond repair, hero costume shredded. Yet he looks so peaceful. Too young. Too young. Too young. And it's all Shota's fault. Aizawa? Yagi's voice is barely a startled whisper. Shota doesn't respond, empty obsidian eyes staring at the corpse of his student, his kid. And then Yagi suddenly jolts, a sharp inhale echoing around them, and then Yagi places a hand against Shota's arm. "Shota," Yagi calls out gently. "Young Midoriya isn't dead. He's okay. I only thought we'd lost him." Shota looks up so fast he nearly snaps his neck, and Yagi smiles softly, nodding encouragingly as he lowers Midoriya into Shota's lap, and then places Shota's hand against his problem child's heart. And Shota hears the steady beat of it underneath his palm. Thump, thump, thump. He feels wetness against his cheeks, and becomes acutely aware of the fact that he's crying, but he can't stop himself as he chokes on sobs. He doesn't know how long he sits there, Midoriya's body in his arms, a hand on his heart, lips pressed against the kid's forehead, and capture weapon discarded to the side as Shota tries to steady his own breathing. At some point, however, Hisashi approaches Shota, and afterwards stays with him as they load Midoriya onto a stretcher, and to the building where the entire class is being treated. After a full examination by the medics, as well as Recovery Girl, Shota is informed that Midoriya will heal up just fine. He has a concussion, 6 broken ribs, 2 fractured arms, and a sprain in his left ankle, not accounting for all the minor bruises and scratches all over his body and face. Most of them will leave scars, and there's nothing we can do about that, the doctor tells him, and Shota nods in understanding, ignoring the way his heart clenches. Too young. Too young to be carrying such battle scars. Recovery Girl tells him that she cannot heal him now, or for the next 3 days, at least, because he has no energy for healing. Bodily reserves completely depleted, and Shota's so tired, because he doesn't know how to make Midoriya understand his self-sacrificing nature. Shota knows as heroes they have to make hard choices, knows that they are trained to take risks at the cost of their own lives, and what Shota thought as a teacher was selfish. He had no right to even imply these thoughts to his students. But if he didn't at least try, then he wouldn't be able to live with himself. Please live for me, Shota wants to beg. He has to find a way to make Problem Child of all people understand his life's worth. Plenty of rest and food is what he needs, Shota, Shizenji tells him strictly, and then she sighs, a small smile gracing her face as she presses Shota's hand comfortingly, knowingly. He's going to be just fine, Shota. This isn't your fault, and you did everything you could. Shota nods numbly and faintly hears her talk with Hisashi, but doesn't register the conversation. He sits by Midoriya, holding his hand, eyes never straying from the green-haired boy. Shota's scared that if he takes his eyes off of him, even for a second, the Problem Child will run off somewhere else, and this time, Shota will lose him. Sho, you need to rest your eyes for a bit. You haven't slept for a good 30 hours at least. He doesn't offer a response. Sunshine, Hisashi coaxes him gently. At least go see your other students. I know you're terrified to lose the little listener, but there are 19 other kids waiting for you, Shota. There's a pause before he sees Hisashi kneel down in front of him. Sho, he's safe now. It's okay. Hisashi rubs his fingers tenderly against Shota's cheeks, worry in his eyes. Shota exhales slowly, his eyes staying on Midoriya, but his voice comes out quietly. You'll stay here and watch him? Of course, Hisashi replies instantly. No, you'll watch him. You won't be on your phone, Shota stresses. I won't do anything else, Sho. I swear, Hisashi promises with a smile. Okay. Shota breathes out. I'll be back in an hour, tops. Take your time. I won't leave him out of my sight. Call me if anything changes, Shota adds as he picks up his capture weapon. Shota, get out of here, Hisashi says pointedly. Shota grumbles a little before he leaves. He's surprised, even though he shouldn't be, when he finds the other 19 students sitting together. Even Bakugo is there, sitting with Kirishima and Kaminari with a light scowl. When they spot him, a chorus of "Sensei" rings through the room, before Shota glares and shuts them up. This is still a hospital, please remember that, Shota sighs. Sorry, Sensei. Yayorozu apologizes on behalf of the class. How are you all doing? He makes sure to look at each and every one of them. Sensei, the important question is how is Midoriya doing? Kirishima asks, and the rest of the class follows in quiet murmurs. Shota sighs again. He'll be alright. He'll make a full recovery. No need to worry about him so much. Can we visit him? Uraraka pipes up. After he's woken up and the medics have given the clear. Shota answers tiredly. Now, back to all of you. He redirects the question again. When Shota arrives back to Midoriya and Hisashi, he finds the kid awake while Hisashi talks to him animatedly. He walks in, and green eyes are drawn to him immediately.
"Problem child?"
Shota greets. "Sensei." Midoriya greets back sheepishly, and then glances at Hisashi, who shoots him a thumbs up. Shota takes Hisashi's place on the chair again.
"I'm going to excuse you just this once, because there was no one to ask for help, and you kids did the best you could."
Midoriya stares at him, eyes widening, and then he nods, swallowing hard.
"But,"
Shota says,
"I need you to understand that what you did, you can't keep doing it again and again, kid."
"Doing what, Sensei?" Midoriya asks him quietly, eyebrows furrowing in confusion.
"Why did you think I'd be mad at you?"
Shota counters. Midoriya's jaw falls open, and Shota rolls his eyes.
"I saw,"
he explains, gesturing between Midoriya and Hisashi. Well, the first thing I asked after I woke up was how everyone in class was doing, and then Yamada-sensei said that I should take it easy because apparently I almost died, and, well..." Midoriya awkwardly trailed off, voice growing more quiet with every passing second. Shota suspected that if Midoriya's hands weren't broken, he would have gestured something to finish the explanation.
"And then?"
Shota asks, waiting patiently. You cried." Midoriya's voice cracks, and he looks away. Shota sees the shame and guilt eating away at his student, and he moves forward. Shota places a hand on Midoriya's head and gently threads his fingers through his hair.
"Izuku, look at me, kiddo."
Midoriya peers up at him, tears already half forming.
"I'm not mad at you,"
Shota says slowly, emphasizing his words, and he waits until Midoriya acknowledges his statement with a nod.
"I'm not disappointed in you."
Another nod.
"You're not in trouble."
Another nod.
"I was scared."
Shota watches as Midoriya's lip trembles, a few tears slipping down his cheeks, and then he bows his head. "I'm sorry, Sensei," he mumbles out.
"Because your life is important to me."
Midoriya looks up at him, eyes pinch and mouth set in a frown. Shota continues without waiting for a response anymore.
"Because you're a hero. You're my kid. Because you kids are my entire world. Because I can't lose you. Because I wouldn't know how to live without my problem child. Because I love you, Izuku."
Shota watches as Midoriya bursts into tears, loud sobs reverberating around them, body shaking. Shota wraps his arms carefully around the kid to not further aggravate his injuries, and presses his lips against Midoriya's temple. He closes his eyes and inhales.
"I've got you now, kiddo. You're safe."
He feels Midoriya press his face tighter against Shota's chest, and hears muffled cries of repeated apologies, before Shota gently lifts the kid's face and wipes his tears away.
"Shh. Stop apologizing. You don't have anything to apologize for, because I know it was needed this time, and I'm proud of you."
Midoriya sniffles, a watery smile making its way to his face. You're proud of me?"
"I always have been, and I always will be,"
Shota says, like it's the easiest thing in the world. And it is, because it's the truth, plain and simple. Midoriya recognizes this too, as his smile widens and he whispers, "Thank you."
"Although, I do expect a paper on how heroes must strike a balance between their work and self-sacrifice and recklessness as punishment,"
Shota adds coolly. Hopefully, this would be a start. Midoriya sighs, but his smile remains. Obviously, I wasn't getting out of this unscathed. If it was up to Shota, little listener,
You and the entire class would be bubble-wrapped and locked in UA, never allowed out of his sight again.
Hisashi chuckles from behind them. Midoriya laughs until he sees Shota's face, and horror etches across his own.
Yamada-sensei, we have to run. Aizawa-sensei is totally, seriously contemplating it.
And as the rest of the class floods in to see Midoriya, because when have they ever listened to their teacher, Shota does wistfully wish that the kids would never leave his sight again. Damn villain magnets.
Hello everyone, this is IcarusAudios, and I hope you enjoyed this story as much as I did. You can find architect_of_stars on Archive of Our Own or through the link in the description. If you like the content and want more in the future, click the subscribe button to be notified when a new podfic comes out. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.